Okay, guys, so here's something new we haven't done yet. I've already kind of explained it in your Google Classroom on Share, but this will be a video lecture, and you guys will follow along with the notes that are attached and simply fill in the information as you go along. We are actually in the middle or starting the skeletal system, and there's going to be quite a bit of work we're going to do here, so I want to make sure you have everything you need to be successful. So, the skeletal system, let's go ahead and move on through here. Skeletal system, what we're going to be talking about here are the bones of the skeletal system, the joints, ligaments, cartilage, bursa, and bursa sacs, and fractures, injuries that might happen. We've already gone over the 20 basic bones we need to know about. We should understand that there are 206 name bones in the human body. And we talked about how one of those is the sesamoid bone, and we're going to talk more about some other stuff called the worming bones as well. Structure of the skeletal system. What is it actually meant for? It's framework. Without our bones, we are a pile of mush. Okay, we need the bones for multiple things. One of which is framework. Okay, it also is about protecting internal organs. The structures around your chest, the thoracic cavity, ribs, and spinal cage, and the spinal column and the sternum create your thoracic cage protects your heart and lungs. The cranium obviously protects the brain. The pelvic bone protects the reproductive organs, and so we have some protection. Stores calcium. Reality is, people don't really understand this. Your bones have all the calcium they'll ever need. You can bring in more calcium, it's not going to do anything necessarily for you. When you begin to lose calcium, then supplements are a good thing. But at your age right now, you don't need more calcium. Your body maintains that on its own as it takes in food that's necessary. So any calcium that you take in is stored in your bones, and it's stored for movement. It's used in creating ATP in the muscles, and so that's what the stored calcium is inside those bones. Forms some blood cells. Your red marrow inside your bones themselves create and formulate new red blood cells. So as red blood cells die off, erythrocytes die off, new ones are made through your bones, the center cavity, the medullary cavity, which is red marrow in some cases, producing new red blood cells. And movement, part of the framework. If we didn't have bones, we'd be a pile of mush. Our muscles would have nothing to pull against. So the idea here is with our bones and muscle, as we pull against the muscles, pull against those bones, we create movements with hinge joints and impingement areas that allow for that movement. Formation, very, very important for you shut-ins to get outside. Vitamin D is a necessity, and vitamin D is created by the sun. Milk is another good source of that, but the sun is probably the best thing for you, and supplements as well. Calcium is a good source. Milk is a good source, not the best, but it is a good source. Vegetables are a great source of calcium. For all of you that don't like vegetables, you better start eating them. Phosphorus is definitely necessary for formation, and that comes from meats. Okay, so those of us that are vegans, we need to find our protein somewhere else. But again, meat's probably the best place for that protein. Bones. Bone facts. Bones are hard, rigid structures and are made up of living cells. They are covered by a membrane called the periosteum. The periosteum contains blood vessels that supply bone cells with oxygen and food. Peri meaning on the outside, right? Before, periosteum on the outside. Bone facts. Inside the hollow center of the bone is the substance called bone marrow. Also means spinal cord, so mile meaning marrow or spinal cord. Blood cells are manufactured in this bone marrow. Now, here's an interesting fact. When we're first born, we are completely filled with red bone marrow. We are proliferating new blood cells constantly as we grow and mature. As we hit into our early teen years or adolescent teen years, we begin to slow down the need for new red blood cells as growth begins to slow down, and the need to create red blood cells diminishes. So we don't need as much red marrow. So eventually, your red marrow goes away, and inside your bones is filled with yellow marrow. If you don't get it yet, yellow marrow is nothing more than fat. So the majority of your bones now are filled with fat. They're not filled with red marrow. Typically, you're going to find the red marrow in the sternum, the cranium, and the hip bones is where you're going to find most of your red marrow now. Bones, oste 206, as we just talked about, named bones, important fact, okay? Skeleton is divided into two major portions. I'm going to attempt to put together some color sheets that we would normally do in class, and I think we're going to try and use Cami for this, so it should be kind of interesting to see if it works. But I'm going to give you two color pages, not now, later this week, that are going to kind of depict and explain the two different portions of the skeletal system, and you through Cami can color the picture if it works out right. I've still got to work on this, and then on top of that, there'll be some questions to answer as well. Okay, so let's look at this. Bones, the axial skeletal system, one of those two systems. There are 80 bones pertaining to the axial skeletal system. Imaginary line through center of the body, divides it in half, maintains the trunk of the body, and skull, spine, column, ribs, and sternum are where you would find the typical area of the axial skeletal system. Think of it this way, okay? The Earth spins on the axis, the center point where the Earth spins, right? The axis. So that's what we're looking at here, the axial skeletal system, the center point of the body. This is the skull, the spinal column, the rib cage, the sternum, which all create the axial skeletal system. 80 bones found here. There are 206 bones. You guys know that, right? Okay. Check it out. 126 bones in the appendicular. If you divide or you add, 126 and 80, you come up with, that's right, 206 bones. 126 bones attached to the axis, okay, the axial system. Anything attached to the major part of the body. So this would include your extremities, which is part of your shoulder girdle, your arm bones, your pelvic girdle, and leg bones. 126 bones total, named bones in the human body. Here's a picture of your appendicular and your axial skeletal system. Axial depicted in green and appendicular depicted in purple. And it kind of lists all those bones and most of what we've gone over already in those 20 that we need to know about. Bones, different shapes, long bones. Long bones that bear the weight of the body. The bones of the legs are long bones. So these are bones that actually hold on to the weight of our body. So they're referred to as long bones. And they basically are longer than they are wider. It's really another way to define them. Short bones that allow skin and, bones that allow skill and ease in movement. The bones in the wrist, fingers, ankles, and toes are short bones. Ease of movement. These are dexterity type bones. They functionally move in very fine, simple motor functions. Flat bones, bones that protect the organs of the body. These bones include the ribs, the skull, the pelvic bones, and the shoulder girdle, or shoulder blade, the scapula. So these are typically flat in nature, and they're all about protection. They actually protect those organs within our body. The skull being flat, even though it's curved, just like the ribs, it's a flat bone. Irregular bones. The vertebrae in the spinal column are irregular bones. They allow various degrees of movement and flexibility. Horrible picture there. Sorry, guys. We're going to see a better picture of this, but this is the spinal column. It is very, very flexible, but these bones don't have any true, regular shape as far as long and thin or, flat and curved. These are very unusually shaped bones that actually they're all similar in nature, but they create the irregular type bones. Vertebral column, spinal column, there are 26 bones total, depending on how you divide it up. You have your cervical spine, which is 7 in the neck. You have your thoracic, which is 12. It creates the chest attachments to the ribs. The lumbar is 5, the largest structure in the spinal column. The sacrum, there is 1 back of the pelvic girdle, or you can look at it as 5 because it's fused together. They are once movable parts, but now they're all one. And then coccyx, which is your tailbone, and there are 4 there. And at one point they were actually 4 individuals, but now they are actually 1. Vertebral discs, intravertebral discs, pads of cartilage separating vertebrae, act as shock absorbers. So as you're moving around, these things kind of compress and move around to kind of take up some of the shock that you put at them. Permit bending and twisting movements. So this allows us to actually bend and twist in ways to move around. Be careful, too much of this, too great of this, and we can cause ourselves some serious back issues. And we're going to stop here, guys. We're going to talk about joints at another point in time. You guys are going to take some time to really research some of this stuff a little bit. So you should have, at this point, gone through the lecture with us. And obviously, you can stop and pause it and go back if you need to. And you fill in the Google Doc that is listed as the skeletal system notes. And when you're done, you submit it. Okay, as simple as that. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk with you soon. Bye.